you know, certain things I'm paranoid about, or whatever word you want to call with. My wife's like, what's the big deal with that? Or what's this? You know, you're always thinking somebody's after you because of life you lived. I'm like, listen, unless you really fully understand a life a person's lived, you're not going to know why they're wired the way they are.
Correct.
You know, you're recreating yourself constantly, but there's also the life you've seen. This is the life you've seen. We've not seen the life you and Tristan have seen.
Correct.
But when I watch you, I'm like, okay, strong personality, high self-confidence, comfortable in his own skin, BMF, badass, great communicator, charming, charismatic, persuasive, all this stuff. Stuff he says about women, 5 wives, all, you know, playing around, constant, all this stuff. But I feel a strong level of conviction in traditional values, in conservative values. And then I'm listening to you, I'm like, okay, so I grew up with certain men that have influence over me. Hey, why do you interview all these mobsters? I grew up watching Godfather 2 and Goodfellas and, you know, all the, and there's certain things amongst them that I really respect. Forget about the stuff about, you know, the murder, the killing, set that aside. But certain code they had that they worked together with, it kept things safe. So this is why we like watching Casino. We like watching Godfather. We like watching this. You ask any Fortune 500 CEO, half of them are going to say, what's the movie that influenced you the most? Godfather 2. Godfather 2. Godfather 2. As much as we're like, well, not in real life, but it will be fine, but not in real life. Yeah. But where is the conservative, strong values that you have? Again, this to the average person watching and say, what the hell are you talking about? This is the same guy that talks about women shouldn't drive, women not this, women not this. I feel like it's there. I feel like sometimes you don't fully bring it out. I feel like it's almost like, you know, the saying, I worked with a leader for many years who the saying was, never show hurt. We never show hurt. You never show hurt. You never show hurt. Never show hurt. You never show hurt. And you're like, never show hurt. I'm never freaking showing hurt. Hell no, I'm not showing hurt, because I'm not going to let you have one in over me to a vulnerable, and then you use that to get something out of me. I'm not freaking doing that to you. Never show hurt. Never show hurt. And then the other side is, but if people are going to really know who you are, you got to show a little bit of vulnerability for people to know who you are. For you, values, principles, deep down inside, traditional. Is it real, or is it just a pure, you know, confusion I have here with my, you know, understanding of you?
No, it's absolutely and utterly real. And I think that it is based in the natural. I think it's a natural tendency to be conservatively minded if you are masculine, and also if you are competent. I feel like a lot of my traditional masculine values just come from my respect in myself and my confidence in myself in dangerous situations. Recently, I was in the Romanian mountains. It started to snow heavily. There was a blizzard. I was with a girl. It was her car. She goes, oh, we have to drive home. I said, I'm going to drive. She goes, my car. I said, yeah, but I'm going to drive. She goes, why? Because this is a blizzard. She's like, well, okay. It's not me being misogynistic. It's just, I know I can drive in a blizzard. I just trust me. I just trust myself. And I trust future self even more than I trust my current self, if that makes sense. So if I have a situation now where I have a play to make, and it seems semi-risky, I'll think, well, future Andrew's even better than current Andrew. So future Andrew, 4 years from now, he'll fix it. Let's say it goes wrong. Future Andrew's got it. If current Andrew can pull X off, future Andrew can pull Y off. So we're going to take the riskier option with a bigger reward, for example. Obviously, you don't have to be stupid, but I think that when you have true belief in yourself and you have true competence, you're going to naturally inclinate towards being a protector and a provider and have these conservative values. It's really interesting that the closer a society is to the survival line, the closer people naturally bend to their gender roles anyway. So let's say we take America, right, where you have feminists and hard liberals and all this garbage. If they were all marooned on a desert island, let's say there's a shipwreck, they got marooned on a desert island, one of two things would happen. They'd stick with their Western world garbage and perish, or they would all quickly align to the natural baselines of humanity, the gender roles. The men would build and hunt, the women would gather and look after the sick, and then they'd survive. The closer you are to survival, the more important you are. The more important it is that you align to your gender role, because if you don't have a chance of survival. So in countries where it's harder to survive, they're more traditionalistic. It's only in very, very privileged societies can we pretend that you do not need a man who can protect himself and others. So that's a very privileged society, right? So I think when you have a hard life and you've lived a life on edge, you're naturally going to be inclining towards those things, towards reality and towards conservative values and towards traditionalism, because that gives you the highest chance of survival. I have a highest chance of survival if I focus on doing X and I am this type of person, and the woman next to me is this type of person. And that gives us the best chance. And that makes me a traditionally masculine male and her a traditionally feminine female, especially if you're living a difficult life. Does that make sense? And especially in many parts of the world, that's still true today. In most of the world, that's still true today. We're talking on these podcasts to extremely privileged individuals who want to sit and throw away 98% of how the world functions and say it's bullshit and come along with this brand new thing they've invented for the last 15 years. And I say this often. I say, you find me dangerous that I said something that got me in a lot of trouble. So I'll say it again. I said that if I had to fly, if I was going to get on a plane that was going to fly through the eye of a hurricane and there was a 50% chance of it crashing, I would prefer a male pilot than a female pilot. Feminist lost her mind, called me misogynistic. I said, no, I think that men are calmer under pressure. I'm not saying the pilot, assuming they have the same skill, I'm talking about just the pressure of the plane crashing. In my experience, men are calmer under mortal pressure than a woman would be. She might panic, and then we're definitely going to die. I'm not saying she would panic. I'm not saying all women would panic. I'm saying if I had to choose male pilot or female pilot for this semi-suicide mission, I would choose a male pilot. That's my life experience, right? Everyone will attack me for that, but that's just a life I've lived. By extension, if I had to drop my children off at nursery, I want to drop them at an all-female nursery. I'd never drop my 3-year-old or 4-year-old kid if I had one at an all-male nursery. That'd be weird. So to me, this is how most of the world still functions. This is how the Western world functioned until 10 or 15 years ago. And I say these things and I'm vilified, but I truly believe I wouldn't be so popular and not so many people would resonate with me if large swaths of the population didn't go, well, he has kind of got a point, I guess. I don't think it's that bad. I think a lot of the world is still quite conservative, even in the West. There's just a very, very vocal minority that have all the control of the narrative that are trying to convince the world otherwise. I think the majority of even happy relationships, the man's a man, the woman's a woman. I think that's pretty standard. Perhaps I'm wrong, but in my experience, it certainly is.
You know what I think would be interesting? You know, a lot of your audience, I mean, it's wide. You said 18 to 25-year-old men, women too.
Yeah.
I think it would be amazingly interesting if you sat down with a room of 80-year-olds.
Yeah.
80-year-old men and women. And you know what these people are called in America? They're older than baby boomers. You know what they're called, that generation?
No, tell me.
Traditionalists.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. I'd be very curious to know what old people would have to say about Tate. I doubt that any of the older women or the older men would try to be canceling Tate to be like, yeah, that's everything we've ever known.
But this is the thing that's interesting because the feminist narrative, when I say things like the male pilot, for example, the feminist narrative is that I'm a controlling man who wants control over women. The actual truth is I'm a protective man who wants to protect. And being a man in a position of protecting is not always a good thing. I feel indebted and have a duty to myself and my honor. Meaning that if I'm walking down the street with a beautiful woman and 3 men want to attack her, I have to risk my life now. I can't live my life letting my wife get gang raped on a fucking street and running away. I can't take it as a man. So I have to now die. I have to die or try. I have no choice. So, but that's my duty. But they'll ignore that part. They'll ignore the part where I risk my life, right? And they'll say, oh, but you just want to be controlling, misogynistic. No, I have a duty to protect. I'm calmer under pressure because I've been in more unfortunate situations. I've had more trauma in my life, which has trained me to be more calm under pressure. I would hate to meet a woman who's been through as much trauma as I have. That's not the kind of, that wouldn't make her a good woman. I don't think women need trauma at that level. I don't want women who've been stabbed. There's no need for that. But I have been through it. So I think that in my experience, extrapolation, that men who are successful, a lot of them have been through enough for me to trust them more in a high pressure situation. And like I said, this comes with massive responsibility. This comes with massive detriments and downsides, right? And the feminists are like, no, you're controlling. It's not about controlling. It's about duty. There was no feminist on the Titanic. Then men can die. There's no feminist to this day in Ukraine. The Ukrainian women can leave. You'll see them partying in Warsaw and Prague. Ukrainian men can't leave the country. They're dying in a ditch. They have to stay and fight. Not a single feminist is demanding that the women stay and fight. Not a single one. They don't give a fuck when it turns real. Once it turns hot, then it's woohoo, straight to, what do you want, a sandwich? Sure. Well, what do you want a sandwich, sir? What do you need? Then it all goes back. The closer you are to the real world, the closer people instantly get into their gender roles, because otherwise they get annihilated in real time. That's another thing I said when I was getting called misogynistic and I was arguing with feminists. I said, traditionally, men are the leaders. And in ancient societies, men were in charge. That's because men are oppressive. You've oppressed us forever. That's their narrative. Their narrative is that we've oppressed women forever. I said, no, we've protected and provided for you forever. The reason we are leaders is because if we align with our gender roles, a man's more likely to lead, and that gives us a more competitive chance. In the olden world, where all the empires were currently fighting, if you're not as competitive as possible, you're going to be annihilated. I would argue that perhaps there were some civilizations where women were in charge, but we don't know who they are, and we can't discuss their history because they were fucking annihilated in real time by the ones where the men were in charge, because you are hyper competitive. You're at your optimum when men are in charge. That's just the optimum of the gender roles. That's the way it works. I don't believe we've been oppressing you since the dawn of human time. I disagree. I believe we've been working hard, protecting, providing for you. If men were truly oppressive to women, why don't we send the women to war? Women on women, it's fair, right? We can send all the women to war in Ukraine, all the women to war in Russia. They can die, and we can sit and we can chill and we can go to Warsaw and drink vodka. We don't do that. The men of Ukraine and the men of Russia are dying to protect their women. And then they want to sit and say that we're bad? It's a completely skewed worldview. Whenever they come along and say that we're oppressive and that we have the most money and all this bullshit, it's a lie. We are going out of our way and giving up our lives to protect and provide. And this is where it comes to some of the other things that they said against me. I've said a man has a degree of authority over something he has responsibility for. They took this and they used it and said that I think that men have authority over women. It's not what I said. I said, if I have responsibility for something, I must have a degree of authority over that thing. If I have a car, for it to be parked in the wrong place or for me to drive too fast, whatever, for me to be responsible for the actions of that car, it must be my car. If it's parked in the wrong place, but it's not mine and I'm not allowed to drive it, then I'm not held accountable. For me to be accountable, I have to have responsibility. By extension, that gives me a degree of authority. So what I was saying is, if a woman comes to me and lives with me and I pay the bills and she travels the world with me and she flies on jets and we go to boats and she's taken care of, I'm responsible for her safety if we walk the street at night. I ensure her life is in perfect order. I have a degree of authority where I can say, you're not going to go out at night by yourself. It's dangerous. Or we're not going to go to this country right now. It's dangerous. That's a degree of authority that I have that comes with my responsibility from a protective manner. That does not mean I am oppressive. That does not mean I'm misogynistic. It just means that responsibility and accountability are linked and they can't be decoupled. A captain goes down with the ship because the captain is responsible for what happens on the ship. If the captain gives orders and everyone ignores him, then he doesn't go down with the ship, does he? He has authority because he is responsible. The two things are the same. And once again, people have misunderstood what I've said. And that's what I said. In a healthy relationship, perhaps in my relationships, let's talk from a personal perspective because then I can't be attacked. In my relationships, I am responsible for the emotional security and for the physical security and the fiscal responsibility, the fiscal security of any woman I'm with. And by extension, I have a degree of authority over her to make sure that we as a couple proceed and progress in the best possible way. It's not going to be 50-50 if I'm in charge of the most important things. It's going to be like, listen, I love you very much. I respect what you're saying. And you're totally right about this. But on this one point, I'm sorry, I'm going to be the man. We're doing it this way.
Well, you got in trouble because, by the way, we're here. Like, I think we're all here. But you've gotten in trouble because the analogy you use is like you compare women to children or to animals and say, I have responsibility over my child or over my dog. And then people take the short clip and like, he thinks that women are like children or women like animals.
Well, the children one was actually interesting because that was a slightly different one. With children, I was making a joke and it was semi-satirical. But like all my things, I'm not allowed to make jokes anymore because Zuckerberg gets upset, deletes me. But I made a joke saying that when I travel quickly, I like to travel with just men. If I'm going to a place for a week, I'll take women. Fine. But if I have to hit, let's say, 4 countries in 2 days on the jet, I like to only take men. And they said, why? I said, well, and it was a joke. We were all sitting on a podcast. I said, well, traveling with a woman's like traveling like kids. They get hungry. They have bags. They need the toilet. With men, it's just military. In, out, boom, no sleep. In, out, boom, no sleep. Pack the bag, no sleep. On the jet, no sleep, no sleep. No. You're going to be military, you can get it done. That's what I said, right?
We have a Marine over here being like,
that's what I said.
Yeah,
When I take my girlfriend, she's like, oh, we haven't slept in 2 days. I'm really, really hungry, Andrew. It's like, oh, so am I. Shush. Like, it's just different. So, and that gets taken out of context and they don't accept it as a joke. It's a joke. To a degree, it's a joke. I mean, I still mean what I say, but to a degree, it's a joke.